We're going to be talking a lot about a variety of different things, and we will go at quite a pace because there's such a lot of information to share. But like Kelly said, this is recorded, so don't worry, you can watch it back, you can pause it at your leisure and be able to make notes and different things, and the slides will be sent out to you as well. So tonight, we're going to get through quite a lot. So all these things, we're going to go through the what is it? What is school avoidance? We're going to go through the use of language and why that's important in terms of reframing it. We're going to look through the psychology of it, trauma. We're going to explore different experiences. We're also going to look at the blame game because that is absolutely rife in this area of education. We're going to be looking at school climate and the hierarchy of learners' needs, which we've developed based on quite a lot of research that we've had our hands on. And then we're going to be covering the law. So we're going to look at school policies, the guidance from the Department for Education, and also EHCPs, and we're going to cover a little bit about recovery. Now, as you can see, we're covering a lot. So what I will try and do all the way through is also signpost you to different webinars that you can see on our Sunshine Academy, or perhaps we have coming up, that will give you more detail about something specific. So that will make sense as we go along this evening. So let's get straight into it. What is school avoidance? So it's known by many names. Language is important. However, we're in a safe space here, so we're not going to be telling anybody off for using certain phrases. We know that some are more frowned upon, and actually, I think the psychology will explain why they're frowned upon. But it's known as school refusal to many people, and we say refusal. I'll come on to that in a second. School avoidance, which is our preferred term, because I will also explain that in a second. School reluctance, which actually, if you're reluctant to do something, there's usually a reason behind it. So that's why we've captured that one. School attendance difficulties, that's a phrase that tends to be used a lot in research. Emotionally based school avoidance. This seems to be a more new one that a lot of people are saying EBSA. I personally don't agree with using that as a blanket term because it's not always emotionally based. Again, we're going to come on to that this evening. And then the good old 80s terminology, skiving, playing truant. Because actually, all those children who were skiving and playing truant were actually meeting their own needs. They were actually saying to themselves subconsciously, I need a break. I'm going for a sensory break, which is why I think it's really important that we talk about that. This is not new. And I know I've said this in lots of different reels and podcasts and different things. School avoidance is not a new thing. When people are saying we didn't have it in our day, we did. It's just we didn't have the electronic registers. We didn't have the electric doors on schools and the magnetic doors. There wasn't the safeguarding in place to keep children in school or record when they've not arrived or perhaps they've gone off site. So actually, school avoidance is not a new thing, nor is neurodivergence, anxiety, mental health problems. All these things still existed in the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, and way before, but they're now becoming more talked about. And people want to actually help. It's not acceptable anymore to go and have a cigarette behind the bike sheds because you're being monitored all the time as children. So that's why it's really important that we understand this is not a new thing. This is something that's been around for a long time, but now we're learning more about it. And tonight we're going to learn loads about it. So first of all, I've already started to paint that picture of reframing how we see school attendance difficulties. I think it's really important that we understand that the learner is not at fault. Okay, so first of all, we've got to get rid of that shame that we place upon them when we say the word refusing. If our child was being sick and they were in the loo and they were actually vomiting, you wouldn't then say they're going to refuse to go to school. You'd say they're too unwell to go to school. But yet when things come to mental health, sadly, we bring in the words refusal because we don't quite understand what's going on. We can't physically see that illness. So the first thing we need to do is remember the learner is not at fault. And I refer to the child as the learner quite a lot this evening, simply because it's quicker than saying child or young person. So we're talking about learners. So the learner is not at fault. They're not refusing to comply. or attend. When we've spoken to the children who have difficulties attending school, they want to be there. A lot of our neurodivergent children are the ones who are mainly affected, although it does affect a lot of other children as well, but we're seeing a lot of neurodivergence in those that are affected. I have not met an autistic child who doesn't want to learn. Autistic children typically love learning. It's just how we teach them. That's the bit that we need to get right. It's all outside of their control. And that can often be the main problem, is that they like, if they have anxiety, one of the things you want to do when you're anxious is control what's around you so that you can reduce your anxiety. And one of the things you can't do when you're in a school of 2,000 kids or a classroom of 30 is control your environment. So remember that this is all outside of their control, the environment, but also their emotions, their anxiety, and the way that it physically manifests. It's all outside of their control. And what we've also got to remember as well, and we're going to be talking about this a bit tonight, if a child is reluctant to go to school or avoids going to school, it is very much based on how their brain is perceiving the environment around them as danger. So it's all about how your brain responds to what it perceives. As I mentioned earlier, if anybody watched my Facebook Live, it's not necessarily that we are actually in danger as learners. It's more a case that our brain perceives it as danger. And there are loads of reasons why, which we'll come to this evening. But I think it's very, very important that we change the language, because actually, as I've quoted myself here, language is important. It enables us to share our experiences, emotions, and physical feelings safely with no fear of shame, judgment, or further trauma. Reframing how we see school avoidance is critical for our children's recovery. And we really need to be clinging to that throughout the session this evening. So I'm going to play a quick video now. It's not in depth, but I hope that it gives you a snapshot of how our brains perceive danger and what could possibly be perceived as danger, and making sense of that, really. Hopefully you'll hear it. It's not, it's just a little bit of music with it. Bear with me. So that was a film that we created, a very short film that we created. Let me get off there. And it's available on our YouTube channel and also on our School Avoidance website, because we launched the first School Avoidance Awareness Week several years ago, and it happens at the end of each September. So if you go to the website, it actually shows you a little bit about what's happening this year. But that film, if you want to ever share it, is shareable via our YouTube channel. Now, 80% of children who have established school attendance difficulties exhibit physical and emotional symptoms as a result of anxiety. That was some research that was done. I was going to say it's quite recent. Let's go with recent. It makes me feel young. 1980 and 2001, it was backed up. So it's really important that we understand that anxiety actually is a physical manifestation of emotions and nervous system dysregulation. When we think about anxiety, actually, we think of physical responses. The first thing I think of personally, and by all means discuss this in the chat, is I think of my heart racing. That's a physical sign. I also think of my stomach hurting. A lot of people need to rush to the loo. Some people feel sick. Some people have a headache. have pains in their body. They're all very physical symptoms. So we can't avoid those physical symptoms. And actually, when our children are talking to us about physical symptoms, we shouldn't really pass them off as anything. Shouldn't just sort of brush them under the carpet. We should be looking at them and addressing them.